There's a lot of people that are like, I've been single for years. I can't find the right man. I can't find the right woman. What is wrong with them, or is nothing wrong with them?
There is something wrong with them. And listen, like, and I don't say it to insult them because I don't want anyone to feel bad or beat themselves up. But the reality is that if we're not getting the results we want in life, there's an adjustment we need to make. You know, people who are successful, they understand that. We didn't get to where we are by simply saying, oh, it's just the way the world is and I can't do anything about it. There's nothing wrong with me. No, if we're not seeing progress, we need to make adjustments. So in regards to relationships, I think one of the biggest issues is that men and women refuse to accept what the other gender desires and is looking for in a partner.
Oh.
All right. They want the other person to accept them as they are. This whole take me as I am, flaws and all nonsense, all right, that only keeps them stuck in being single or having to settle for less than they actually desire and would actually make them happy. If people would just accept the qualities and things that the opposite gender needs, they would see greater success and a lot faster.
So what do you think is the number one reason people are single who don't want to be single?
Again, I think it boils down to not tapping into what the opposite sex is looking for, or not tapping into what the type of person you desire is looking for. So it's like, okay, for example, if you have a man who says he wants a woman that'll let him be the leader of the household, all right, and will trust his decision-making, so on and so forth, but you refuse to accept that she needs financial stability from you. You refuse to accept that you may have to take on some of the burden of the bills. Not that she won't contribute, but if you want that kind of dynamic, that kind of woman is looking for a man who will first lead financially. All right. Mm-hmm. On the flip side, if you're a woman saying, well, I want a man who's has his stuff together, who's an alpha man, but you're exuding nothing but masculine energy all the time, you're not going to get that kind of man. You have to tap into femininity because that's what attracts the alpha man, the masculine man, so on and so forth. So again, it's like we're not tapping into the qualities and things that that person would desire in a partner. We just want them to take us as we are and give us what we want. And it's like, no, it doesn't work like that.
Why do so many people continue to live in that, I don't know if you call it a fantasy world, where it's like, what's the famous quote? Like, if you don't accept me at my worst, you shouldn't deserve me at my best, or something like that, right? It's like this fantasy world of, okay, I get that men and women and individuals are going to have bad moments in their life. We're not all going to be perfect. We're not always going to be at our best, but we shouldn't always be at our worst either. Mm-hmm. And if you're always at your worst and not improving, why should someone settle for you at your worst consistently? Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say. And I think that's another big problem, is that people are looking for partners who will take their worst. And it's like, listen, yes, they should be able to get past the rough moments that you have. As you mentioned, we're going to have those moments we're not perfect. Cool. But you're supposed to bring your partner your best. All right. Like, you shouldn't always be coming home and bringing nothing but drama and stress to your partner and say, hey, deal with it because you're supposed to love me. All right. And it's like, yeah, cool. If you had a bad day, a bad week, I'm there for you. But if every damn day is bad and you're stressed out and you're stressing me out, you can't expect to have a healthy relationship with that. So absolutely, people have to get out of that mindset.
What would you want in your partner? If you're going to be your worst all the time, would you want to be around someone who's their worst all the time? It's not going to be fun or fulfilling. It's going to be stressful and overwhelming. And you don't want to get into a relationship to deal with more stress. You want to find someone who can support you with your vision and creating more joy and fulfillment and happiness. So I think a lot of people need to realize, like, the thing I love about my girlfriend the most is she keeps me at such a high standard for myself. She continues to elevate me to say, how can I be better for me, for my dreams, and also for the relationship? You know, if I start to slack off in certain things, she lets me know, like, hey, it's okay for a little bit, but consistently, it's not what she wants in a relationship.
Absolutely.
And so I think, and the same for her, like, I tell her, like, hey, listen, you know, you're bringing a lot of stress to this relationship, like, consistently. It's time that we shift. We've addressed it. You felt it. It's okay. It's been a couple of weeks now. Let's get back to vision. Let's get back to responsibility. Let's get back to, okay, what are some habits we can create together, some goals of the week we can create to get us out of this funk? And I think a lot of people had a lot of stress the first couple of months of COVID. And maybe some of them were just like, we're not the right fit for each other. And maybe some just didn't have the tools to be able to figure out, how do we get through this together? What are some of those tools when both partners are down and out and stressed and overwhelmed and both lost their job and both are dealing with money challenges and both are, what are some tools we can get back on track with to have a thriving relationship?
Communication is number one. We've got to be able to talk to each other. But I think in times like that, it can still be difficult to have these verbal conversations, and both parties have a lot to get off their chest. So that's why I'm such a huge fan of writing letters, because I feel like at that time, it will allow both parties to have a full release, all right? Because you got to imagine, if we're both going through it, then we're both trying to get our side of the story out, or we're trying to express how we're feeling. And that's a long conversation that can have a lot of distractions. Things can, cause you guys to maybe even forget.
Bring up stuff from the past that wasn't even a part of this conversation.
Exactly.
It's the worst.
Exactly.
We're trying to address this one thing, and you bring someone up from 6 months ago, right?
Exactly. Or someone gets offended and they get defensive when you were just trying to be honest. So much can go wrong. So to me, when you write a letter, it really gives you both parties, it gives the writer a chance to get everything out and to assess proper tone and delivery with the message. It gives the receiver time to process and really take it in and listen to understand, not to rebuttal. Because in verbal conversation, it's very easy to listen to rebuttal. But in a letter writing format, you don't really have an opportunity to rebuttal right then and there. So you're more likely to actually take it in. So I think communication is definitely a big part of it.
Hey, it's Lewis here, and I would love to connect directly with you. Text me the word YouTube to my number 614-350-3960 to receive weekly inspirational messages from me.
I also think that if we're going through hard times, we need to at least identify one day out the week where we don't talk about any issues. All right, cool. We already know we're out of work right now. We know we're stressing. Worrying is not going to change that. Let's pick a day where we just enjoy each other. Let's just have fun. I don't care if it's watch Netflix all day together, laid up in the bed, whatever. Let's just enjoy each other. And we agree on this day, we leave all the drama and stress alone. We can return back to that tomorrow. That way, I feel like, when you're constantly discussing all the tough times, you're putting a wedge between each other. And you need something to bring you two back so that you don't drift too far apart. And so I think that having that day of us time is going to be extremely beneficial for people who are going through it.
When someone meets someone new, whether it be a moment, 5-minute conversation, a couple hours, or whatever it may be, when is the appropriate amount of time to know that this person could be one of the people that you spend the rest of your life with, a long time with, could be your love partner? When should we actually know in our gut, in our mind, and bring it together that, okay, this is the person? Is it a moment, instance, yes? Or is it once you learn after months? What do you think?
It's very instant and immediate. So
Wow.
Here's the thing. Society has brainwashed us to believe that love and identifying it takes time. That's a lie. In most situations, when it takes months, you have not fallen in love. You've learned to tolerate them. You've grown attached to them. All right. You've
enjoyed a part of the process. It's giving you connection. You're not lonely.
Exactly. And when you've invested months, you are more likely to not want to walk away from it because all the time and energy you put in. So now you mistake your attachment to the investment as love, and it's not really love. When you sit down with people who can say they felt they have a real connection with their partner, I think every story, I don't know of any one story that's opposite of this, they will all say it was pretty much instant. First date, you may not know 100% fact, I'm going to marry this person, but you knew the potential was there. You knew like this could be the one. That at least came to mind. And so again, when we don't have that in that first conversation, that first day, it's unlikely. I'm not going to sit there and say it's impossible that it can happen days later or a week later or whatever. But typically, And even if you can't articulate it as you knew they could be the one, when people look back, they can tell you that they felt something very strong in that initial engagement with their partner that said they knew something was different. They may not even know what it was, but they knew, okay, this isn't normal. This isn't like the rest. Something's going on here. And then there's a full realization of this is it.
What is that something that we can't understand, that feeling? What is that called? Is that just like your magnets connected to each other? Is that your energy is so attracted because there's so much opposites or it's so much similarities? What is that force that gets people to say there was something different about this person when I met them?
I personally believe it's your spirit recognizing its match. Because if you speak to a lot of people of different religious beliefs, there's the belief that things happen in the spirit before they happen in the physical. All right. So it's almost like the spirit is ahead of us, which is why the spirit knows the truth, which is why intuition, gut instinct, third eye, whatever you want to call it, it always seems to be accurate because your spirit knows before you know. So we're feeling it within our spirit. The problem is it's getting our mind in tune with the spirit. It's allowing our heart to accept what the spirit is saying to us. But we feel it, we just don't know how to always explain it. Those who are very in tune with the spirit can recognize it much quicker and accept it for what it is much quicker because they're very in tune already.
Why is it so hard for our mind and our heart to get caught up to our gut or intuition of that initial explosion of chemistry? And also, can that explosion of connection and chemistry be harmful in a different way?
Okay, so one, fear. Fear is the number one reason why we struggle to accept. So one of the things I explain to a lot of women, and I have my membership group for them. So I've had this discussion where I say, listen, the difference between intuition and fear is logical deduction. So when you're trying to analyze and break things down, that's your mind, all right? And fear is coming into that because you're saying, well, I shouldn't do this because of that, or this can't be this because of that. Intuition requires no logic. Your spirit requires no logic. It simply feels, it senses, it knows. That's it. You don't have to explain it. Again, gut instinct doesn't require things to logically add up. It just tells you this is it, or something's wrong, or this is right, or whatever the case may be. So fear is the number one thing. And that fear stems from lack of healing from past relationships. We've been down this road of emotional investment. We've gotten hurt before. We've been wrong in our lives about wanting to believe someone could be it. Even though we know this feels different, we still have the fear of disappointment that creeps back in.
How do we let go of that fear and not sabotage an amazing opportunity in a relationship?
You got to heal from your past. There's no way around it. And this is why I say people who have not healed, they can meet their connection right now, the most amazing partner, and it will scare them to death. And they will either run, self-sabotage, something. It's going to be a problem because they have not healed. And when you have not healed, the vulnerability that's required in connection is so unlike anything else or with anyone else that if you don't have a level of confidence and, again, a foundation of healing in your life, it seems way too overwhelming and scary. So you've got to heal in order to not find yourself sabotaging, run away, and not being able to embrace that real love.
What if both parties come to something and there's this explosion of chemistry or just instant, like, wow, there's something different feeling, and both have not healed their past, but they stay together, they figure it out, and they're together? Is there going to be a lot of problems and trauma and stress that comes up over the years if they both haven't healed before they get into a relationship? Or can they heal in the relationship together?
It is possible. Let me backtrack a little bit. First, let me say that people have to understand there is the such thing as right person, wrong time. All right? Mm-hmm. People don't want to believe that. There are a lot of people who reject that idea. They say, oh, if it's the wrong time, it's not the right person. That's not true. You can meet that individual that you have an amazing connection with, but both parties still need growth before they can come together. All right? And so now,
what happens if they come together and they haven't healed?
So here's the thing. It is possible to get through that and survive and have a healthy relationship. It is unlikely for most people to survive being with someone you have a connection with and you have not healed. Again, most people won't even allow themselves to be with that person.
They'll sabotage us so much. They'll dive in, but then they'll cheat, or they won't respond to the person. They'll do something, right?
Yes, and speaking of cheating, they tend to have a history of going back to an ex because the ex feels safer because it's not as vulnerable over there. All right, I can maintain more emotional control. It's familiar, so it's easier. So I've seen plenty of situations where, again, the connection was so overwhelming, so they ran back to their ex. No one, they're not for the ex is not for them, and they're not for their ex. But again, it just feels safer there. So yes, a lot can go wrong if you try to be together when you have not healed and you have this connection. It would be best to acknowledge, okay, you know what? We got some work we need to do. We realize we have a connection here. Let's work on ourselves in the meantime before we take that next step.
Can you heal while having sex with one or multiple partners for fun on the side?
I'm not going to say it's impossible, but again, highly unlikely. Sex is such a distracting thing. And we have to understand that so much can come from our sexual interactions. There can be new drama. There can be, an unwanted pregnancy. There can be a host of things. And all of that will derail you in the healing process. You also have to be honest with yourself. You may be having the sex because you're trying to distract yourself from the healing. Like the sex is just a coping mechanism for you. Same as drugs, same as alcohol. People turn to these things because they don't want to deal with their reality in life. So you got to be honest. Are you trying to just bury your head in sexual interactions? Or is it just, if it's happening in a natural flow of life, okay, then there's a greater chance that you can survive this, but you got to be really careful. I would suggest cutting that off if you're trying to heal. Again, I don't want to say it's impossible, but you're going to make it extremely difficult and highly unlikely.
For sure. I want to ask you about the best ways to meet someone these days, 2020 moving forward, the do's and don'ts for online dating. But what I'm hearing you say is that you shouldn't be trying to meet someone. You shouldn't be doing the online dating game until you've fully healed, or at least started the process of healing, because healing is a journey. Sometimes things take a lot longer to heal fully, but at least acknowledging and starting that process. What would be a process to start healing your past relationships or pains before we get into the conversation of do's and don'ts of online dating?
Okay. So of course, going to a therapist or coach is the ideal thing to do. You typically need that outside party that can help you process some things, help you see new perspectives, and go through a process of healing. Now, I will be honest, not every coach and therapist is going to help someone heal. Sometimes it just turns into a venting session. So you've got to be real careful about, okay, if I've been going to this therapist or coach for many weeks or months now, what progress have I really made? Have I been resolving, or have I been coping? Because many are teaching you how to cope and manage and how to function within your brokenness, but they're not resolving it and helping you heal. Now, of course, I'm big on healing. So I have my book, Love After Heartbreak, which gives people the exact steps to healing. So one of the steps, I'll give you the first step, is getting the hurt out in front of you. So it's this who hurt me list. And so you get a piece of paper, you write down who hurt me, and you ask yourself the question, who hurt me? And now everyone who comes to mind, you put them on the paper. Doesn't matter if it happened very long ago. Doesn't matter if you think you moved past it. If they come to mind when you ask the question, then that means there's some kind of relevance there. And so now you put them on the paper in like 2 sentences of what they did to hurt you. This will now at least help us identify what you've been holding on to and where the hurt is and what needs to be properly addressed. And then from there, we can do the other steps of getting things off your chest and forgiveness and all these different things that's involved in healing.
I love that. I'm a big proponent of writing letters to people that you never send them, telling them how it made you feel, what you're frustrated and angry about with them, forgiving them, letting it go. And then I like to burn the letter and bury it as well in the ground to hopefully create a sense of like, okay, this was alive in me and now I'm killing this and this feeling, this energy, and I'm putting it to bed and I'm putting it back in the world to hopefully create something new, to grow something new and more loving and powerful and create that intention. But I think that's really important. When should we know that we are healed enough? How do we know when our healing has gone far enough down its journey before we should get into meeting someone new, putting ourselves out there on social media, online dating apps, and things like that?
All right. Well, first thing I want to say is now there are going to be times where sending the letter to the person is actually the best thing to do.
Really?
Yes. A lot of people are scared about that, and it's a very difficult hurdle to jump. But I literally got a DM today from a woman who read the book. She wrote her letter last year. It was to her mother. She didn't want to send it. She held on to it. She said she just finally built up the courage, because I tell them in the book, 99% of the time, I'm going to tell you to send the letter.
Wow.
And so she finally did it. And she said they end up having the best conversation they've ever had in their life. Now they're like the best of friends. Like, it's taking their relationship to a whole new level. And that's not the purpose of sending it, but there's so much good that can come from taking the extra step of actually sending the letter and making sure that person is aware of how you felt and what you were going through. Now, in regards to knowing when you've properly healed, number one thing is when you can embrace being fully vulnerable with somebody. All right. If vulnerability still scares you, you have not healed enough. All right. You've got to be willing to open your heart. We can't say we want love and then put walls up around our heart and be afraid to give it to someone. You're contradicting yourself. You're working against yourself. So you've got to be willing to be vulnerable. You also have to make sure any negative perceptions that you've held onto due to past experiences, you've done away with them. So for example, if you have been saying all men are dogs because you've been hurt by so many men, well, you can't be out there dating and still screaming all men are dogs. That's not going to work in your favor. You've got to accept that good men exist, that you can receive a great man, that you deserve a great man. So when you have a more positive outlook and way of thinking, and listen, we're going to all have our negative thought moments. That happens. But your dominant or more consistent thought pattern is positive, hopeful, and things of that nature. Now we can say you're ready to get back out there.
If you want to learn how to make yourself more desirable in relationships, then check out this powerful interview with relationship therapist Esther Perel.
The love stories per se are not life stories. There's some things that you don't need in order to have a beautiful love story with someone.